How Rorschach Stole Christmas by a fellow. Every whore down in New York liked Christmas a lot, but Rorschach, who lived in a rundown apartment, did not. Rorschach hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please, don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be that his fedora wasn't screwed on quite right. It could be, perhaps, his trench was too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his trench, he stood there on Christmas Eve, emitting a stench, staring down from his window with a sour-blotted frown at the coked-out pimp with drug deal going down. For he knew every New Yorker in the city down below would look up to him and shout, "Save us!" And then he'd whisper, "No. Why, they're peddling that child pornography." He raunched with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." He growled with his gloved finger nervously drumming, "I must find a way to keep Christmas from coming." For tomorrow he knew all the filthy girls and boys would wake up full of greed, and they'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise! The noise! 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 That's one thing he hated. The noise! 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 Then the vermin, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They'd feast, 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 feast. They would stuff their faces like a gluttonous beast, which was something Rorschach couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every human cockroach in New York, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas lights beaming, like an abattoir full of retarded children. They would all start there screaming, and they'd scream, and they'd scream, they'd scream, 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 scream. And the more Rorschach thought of this whole place, he knew that it feared him. He'd seen its true face. Why, for 45 years I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an awful idea. He had an awful idea. Rorschach got a wonderful, awful idea. "I know what to do," Rorschach hummed in his throat, with a quick Ozymandias headband and coat. "I know just what to do," Rorschach hummed in his throat. And he made a quick Ozymandias headband and coat, and he shopped and he leapt. Now this would be tight. With this band and cape, I'd look just like Adrian Veidt. "All I need is Bubastas." Rorschach looked around, but since giant mutated cats were scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop old Rorschach? No, Rorschach simply said. "If I can't find Bubastis, I'll use Daniel instead." So he called his friend Dan, and he took out some red thread, and he tied big ears to the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags, his face in deadpan. On the deck of the owl ship he prodded poor Dan. Then Rorschach said, "For it!" And the ship started down towards the homes where the scum lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark. The stench of fornication filled the air. The New Yorkers were committing their sins without care. When he came to the first complex in the square, "This is stop number 1, Rorschach hissed, and he climbed the fire escape, grabbing his gun in his fist. "This is stop number 1, Rorschach hissed, and he climbed the fire escape, grappling gun in his fist. Then he kicked in the door, but the lock never fought. Ugh! Should have known better than to trust Gordian knot. He hermed only once, a hand placed to his face. Then he snuck his head out to survey the place, where the extensively filled stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he spat, "are the first to go." Then he slithered and sunk, and mumbling most unpleasant, around the whole room he curb-stomped every present. Action figures, skin mags, liquor of all types, cologne, aftershave, and ball-tipped glass pipes. He stuffed them in trash bags, then Rorschach, very discreet, stuffed them out onto the window to fall to the street. Then he slunk to the fridge, where he decided to hide, where he ate every canned beans while waiting inside. He cleared out the appliance, right down to the tubes, while Rorschach took their last sugar cubes. Then he stuffed the food out the window with glee. "And now, Rorschach," said Rorschach, "I'll burn down the tree." And Rorschach approached the tree when he grabbed some cologne, when he heard a small sound, and he saw he wasn't alone. He turned around fast and saw a costumed whore. Why, little Lori Lou, who was no more than 34. Rorschach had been caught by this little silk spectre, who, staying at her mom's house, rushed out to protect her. She started at Rorschach and said, "Ozymandias, why? Why are you burning down our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Rorschach was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my little red-headed friend," the fake Adrian stood, "stopping me now will do you no good. You know, so complaints and fighting is useless. You know I already burned it down 35 minutes ago." And his fib puzzled the woman, and he gave her a shove back to her room with American love. Then Lori left her gift from old Roar. Then Lori left with her gift from old Roar, a Coke in a green glass bottle they don't make any more. Then the last thing he took was the gun they had. "No license for this. I checked. Very bad." Then he did the same to all the other people's flats, leaving crumbs too small, much too small, for the other people's rats. It was 1/4 dawn when he gave them the slide, and all the citizens still a snooze when he packed up the ship. He packed it up with their rabies and their pipes with circular tips. All he could do was a fletch foam from their lips. 50 feet up, on top of Gordiner, to burn all their filth, why there could be nothing finer. "Liberals and prostitutes," Rorschachishly humming. "They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They'll just wake up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a minute or two, and all the evil of New York will cry, 'Boo-hoo!' That's a noise," Rorschach raunched, "that I'd like to spread across the nation." So he put a hand to his ear for further investigation, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow, but the sound wasn't sad. This sound sounded happy. It couldn't be so! The story got sappy! He stared down at the city. Rorschach widened his brown eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every politician in New York, every hooker on call, was singing, without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It had came! Despite all the pinkies he had fractured, it came just the same! And Rorschach, with his booted feet ice-gloved in the snow, stood there humming and eking. How could it be so? It came without debauchery, sex, and bad taste. It came without murder foaming up about their waist. And he hummed for 3 hours till his humor was sore. Then Rorschach thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, isn't something to deplore. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. Then what? Well, in Manhattan, they say, Rorschach's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart couldn't beat so quite fast, he bought back the bags. He brought back the junk he'd stolen from the rest of the cast. He brought back the food, the meat, and the greens. Why, he himself, Rorschach, brought the baked beans.